Hey, shalom, brothers and sisters. It's Amanda again. I pray that you all have had a blessed day and a restful evening so far. So, I am coming on this evening to share a word with all of you, and it is going to be a word on intimacy again. Praise Yah that I have been able to record and publish several episodes on the area of intimacy, and I just think that this is so important to share because we know that intimacy is a very important part of marriage, and I'm so thankful that I've been able to do a series on it and just share some various words on the area of intimacy. So this is what this episode is going to be this evening. I'm going to be talking about it's same topic but two different things. The first half of the episode will be more for wives, as I just share some information that I came across in a book that I actually recommended in the Marriage Bed series. And the second part I will be talking about a position for lovemaking that I came across in the book, as well as just while doing research, and I feel that this would be a really great position to share with all of you in terms of the information and why I feel it would be beneficial for just about any couple and for both husbands and wives. And yeah, I'm just going to be sharing more about that in hopes that it will be helpful for couples out there. So before I get started, I just kind of want to do a quick recap with doing words of intimacy, because I actually had received an email some time back where someone had expressed to me that they felt that these episodes that I was recording and publishing in regards to intimacy was inappropriate because I would go into, a great amount of detail and things like that. So I did talk about this briefly in one of the Marriage Bed episodes. I addressed it, and so I just want to say this one more time because this episode will be in detail. I will label it explicit, as I have other episodes that I felt were detailed, just in case I do have any young people listening. Hopefully everybody following this podcast is an adult. So with that being said, I just want to go ahead and say this. So number one, we're all adults. We're all adults, we're all mature, and, again, intimacy, sex, God created for the intent of marriage, and this is a marriage ministry. So for me to have a marriage ministry on a podcast and not talk about sex, not talk about lovemaking, would just be very strange. It's such an important part of marriage, and I think that, Yah would absolutely want me to talk about certain things in that area, because again, the whole point of this ministry is to help husbands and wives, is to help them understand marriage His way, and is to help them understand different areas in their marriage. So for me not to talk about the area of intimacy, I think would be really silly and dishonoring. And I can't even begin to tell you that I have had several people reach out with their problem being in that area. So again, it's not uncommon to have problems in that area of marriage, sadly, and it shouldn't be an issue. I was even talking about how sad is it that husbands and wives can't even talk to one another about sex, which is actually one of the pieces I'm going to be sharing from this book is about communication. But I just think it's sad, and I know that it's because many of us, myself included, were taught by, churches and false doctrines, or even family and friends, that, sex is dirty and is not to be talked about and this and that. And a lot of that has to do with how our society and the world has treated sex. It's become perverted. It's become cheapened. Sex has actually become sinful because of what so many people are doing. But we know that our Creator, our Father, created this for the intent of marriage, and it's a very beautiful gift. And just incredible how the Father created something that is just so very intimate, and also helps in reproducing and being able to have children. I think it's just very beautiful. I really, really do. When you really think about it, it's such a beautiful thing. But yet our society and the world, the enemy, has taken it and has just completely just devalued it and changed it. And so many of us grew up believing that we were not to talk about it, that it's shameful, that it's, dirty and things like that. And so I understand that, but it's time that we bring the truth and that we try to help as many people as we can to understand that, sex is a gift from Yah. And when we're in a marriage, ordained by Him, it is some of the most beautiful experiences that we can ever have. So again, if these episodes offend anybody or, it makes you uncomfortable, you have a choice to not listen. You do not have to listen to this. I do try to make sure that I state in the description of the episode what I'm talking about, and I will label the episode explicit. So if you see an E on the episode, it means it's explicit. It goes into detail that may not be appropriate for everybody. And I'm not doing it in any disrespectful or, any derogatory way or borderline soft porn or anything like that. That's why there's even certain sections in this book, Intended for Pleasure, that I recommended in the Marriage Bed series. I'm not even going to read a lot of what's in this book because people are probably going to take it as soft porn, oh, she's, reading about positions and how to do this and that, and so, because I was going to share something quite some time back and I was like, nope, I'm not going to, because people are going to get offended or people are going to think, I'm being, weird or whatever, or, so all I can do is recommend the book. I really recommend this book, whether you are a little bit younger and you're preparing for marriage, or you're getting ready to step into your marriage and go into your honeymoon, whether you've been married, a year or two or several years or wherever you're at. I think every husband and wife can benefit from this book. For me, it was kind of like chew the meat, spit out the bones. I didn't agree with everything in this book. However, I was able to glean a lot from this book. I've read it twice now, and it has just been a blessing. Really, really awesome. So, and there's no shame. There's no shame in it. I think it's wise for us to gain knowledge that we need. But yeah, I just wanted to start off by saying that because I know that there's a couple of people out there that aren't always going to be happy about these kinds of episodes, and I say it because in this episode, I'm going to go into some detail, especially in the second half when I talk about a position for lovemaking that I want to recommend for everybody. So anyways, let me go ahead and get started. So again, I'm going to be reading from the book Intended for Pleasure by Ed Wheat and his wife. And again, I recommended this book in one of the Marriage Bed episodes. And I'm going to read, I came across something that I thought would be great for other wives to hear. Some of it has to do with communication, which I think is vital, not just for wives, but husbands too. And then I'm going to be reading about our attitudes as wives towards our husbands when it comes to lovemaking. So I've had sisters ask me, what do I do when I'm upset with my husband and don't feel much like, making love, or, he has said something that's hurt me, or, because the truth of the matter is that sometimes wives and husbands have different views of sex. Husbands generally have a tendency to wanting and desiring lovemaking a little bit more than women. Now, it's not always true, and it's not all women are the same. There are some women that do desire it just as much as men. They have a high libido. But a lot of women, unfortunately, do not have a high libido, and many have trouble even achieving orgasm. And this is something that I'll talk a little bit more about later. This is why I'm going to recommend this position. But for women too, we also have a tendency of attaching emotions and feelings to lovemaking, which lovemaking should be about those things. Husbands kind of have a tendency to not always connect those more sensitive things to sex, which is why I think men have a capability of being able to sleep around without attachments than women can, because women attach feelings and emotions to sex. Like if you have sex, like it's a huge thing. Like you must be in love. You must be that. Men have this ability, I don't know why, where they don't attach those kinds of things to sex. Now, obviously, when I say that, I'm referring to a man maybe sleeping with a woman that they really don't have feelings for. It was just really more of a straight up pleasure thing. Lovemaking obviously is a completely different story, but I'm just saying as an example that men were for some reason created with the ability to be able to not really attach feelings all the time, or emotions, or I don't know. Hopefully I'm making sense. So the reason why I'm saying that is because we women are like that. Sometimes we don't always feel like being intimate with our husbands because maybe they forgot, I don't know, our anniversary, right? Or they said something, meant as a joke, but it hurt us and they didn't apologize. Or, it could be minor, it can be major. And so we won't really much feel like making love to whereas for a husband, it's not that big of a deal. Maybe you could have said something to upset him, but then later on the day or by evening time, you're like, hey, let's do this. And husband is like, yeah, let's go. And they just completely forgot all about like what made him mad earlier. You know what I mean? So like husbands are not as like emotionally like, oh, she said this to hurt me, so I really don't, and I'm not saying men don't have that capability of feeling that way as well. They do. It's just for some reason women are more attached to that than men are. I don't know if I'm making sense. Men and women think differently, period. Men have a tendency to compartmentalize everything. They think of everything one at a time. They don't really connect like everything together. Whereas women, we multitask a lot more. We connect things a lot more. Yeah. So anyways, when it comes to lovemaking, sometimes, and I've had sisters come to me, what do I do if I'm upset or I'm really tired, I'm really burnt out? Because men could be like burnt out, okay? Worked all day long, they're exhausted. And unless they've passed out, more than likely, if you were to initiate sex with them, they're for it, no matter how tired they are. Women, on the other hand, is a little bit different, And again, the other thing too is that women take a lot longer or require more stimulation and, quote unquote, warming up than men. Men, they get aroused, they have an erection, they're ready to go. Women, it takes a little bit more of a process, okay? Which is why I say, because I've had people ask me this, is foreplay okay? As believers, things like that, is foreplay okay? Is oral okay? And I have said yes and yes. It's really needed, and it's how every lovemaking should begin, is foreplay. And this book actually gives some really great ideas, just off top of my head from what I've read, and so that I don't go into as much detail as the book did. But there's one for men where wives, you can help your husbands. Like say they have, I don't know, maybe they come too quickly. You can help your husbands with that, but at the same time, kind of make it into foreplay and just help them with that. There's one for wives where the husband takes his time in exploring the wife's body and, just helping her to feel and have these sensations and warming up to the actual act itself. So again, if you don't have this book, I really highly recommend that you buy it. Again, there's a lot of great information in there that, I don't want to share or read because, again, of what I said earlier, but I think that it would be beneficial. So, but anyways, going back to the point that I was trying to make. So again, men and women approach lovemaking differently a lot of the times. And so for wives, sometimes it can be really hard Maybe you're not feeling attractive because you've had a few children, or you're very tired. You just don't look or feel great, maybe. Or again, maybe he has said or done something that's hurt you. It hasn't maybe even resolved yet. Just a whole plethora of things. And so you don't really feel like making love. And so I just kind of want to share from this book real quick. The first part is talking about communication, which again is so vital in the area of intimacy. I think it's crazy that husbands and wives don't talk to each other about sex. It's crazy to me. And I think really foolish. I guess maybe I should be a little more understanding about that. Maybe some people feel that way because of maybe things that have happened in the past, or, I know there can be things there that's why that's happening, but husbands and wives should be talking to each other about sex, period. And then I'm also going to share about attitudes and actions with this. So let me go ahead and jump in, because I want to be able to share all the information I have for you all this evening. Okay, so it says that, and again, this is the author's wife that wrote this. She's the one that's speaking here. So it says, it is very important that you consider communication. Sex without communication has little to commend it. Your communication may be of the nonverbal kind during the lovemaking process itself. Perhaps you have learned to do what maybe some people have suggested, to put your hand lovingly over your husband and show him where you want stimulation. And if he is too rough or too gentle, to show him again with your hand over his. There are ways of telling him when you are ready for intercourse without saying a word. But even before you make love, you may need to communicate your needs to your husband, frankly and clearly. He may have needs to tell you about as well. If you want to reach orgasm and are not doing so, ask him to give the manual stimulation that will bring you to orgasm. It is amazing how silent we women are on something as important as the sex act in marriage. We wish in silence, or we suffer in silence, or we hope that this time he will be different, that this time he will think of doing that which we long for him to do. So why not just tell him? While we are speaking of communication, let me caution you about one thing that is better left uncommunicated. Some wives, out of a desire to please their husband, or for other reasons, have pretended for years that they are wildly enjoying lovemaking, when really they never even reach orgasm. Now, with all the talk in magazine articles about attaining orgasm, they realize that they could have it after all, if only their husbands knew what to do. But the poor men think that they have been doing it all these years. Some women, in an attempt at honesty, finally tell their husbands they have been faking a response. The results of this can be almost disastrous. We have known husbands whose egos were crushed by this revelation. Realizing that the wife has been living a lie, a husband may well wonder what other areas of the relationship have been dishonest as well. Wives, please, I'm saying this, not the author, please never lie to your husband about something like that. It's not good to do. All right, if you have painted yourself into a corner by pretense, you'll have to work yourself out of it with wisdom and a lot of prayer. Make some graceful suggestions to your husband concerning techniques you've read about that maybe you would like to try, but without any hint of criticism implying that he has failed to arouse or satisfy you all this time. As these techniques are tried, you may find pretense becoming a wonderful reality. All right, so I wanted to share that because, again, communication is key, and I also want to share, wives, please don't ever lie to your husband about those types of things. It's not good. Not good at all. All right, so let's talk about attitudes and actions real quick. So after evaluation time and communication is over, action should begin. You may feel, as some women have expressed to me, that even though you know your attitudes are not right, you just can't change them. The woman who says she can't. She is already committed to failure. On the other hand, the woman who has the enabling power of Elohim within her can change. So how does it happen? By turning your attitude over to Yahuwah and then beginning to be and say and do what you know is right. Realize that as you please your husband, you are both obeying and pleasing Yahuwah. Let it be a love offering to both. Yahuwah will not make you do anything, and he will not change you without your cooperation. You are not a robot or a puppet on a string. But if you know the attitude you should have, then you have to say, okay, with Elohim's strength operating in me, I'm going to be different. and then begin to do it. How does a woman quit biting her nails? Not by saying, I can't, but by quitting. The principle is the same in changing your attitudes towards love, sex, marriage, and your husband. There are a number of things you might consider to make sex more enjoyable for both of you. First, let me suggest the tool of anticipation, particularly if you have had some faulty attitudes concerning the sex experience. A period of romantic anticipation for sex, building up all day and ending happily in bed, can very much enhance the love relationship. Your husband has the opportunity to stir your interest and increase his own anticipation. For example, if he gives you a very meaningful kiss when he leaves for work, and then phones you sometime during the day, just because he's thinking of you or missing you, which I think is so sweet, the stage is being set for responsive welcome to his lovemaking after the children have been put to bed. If your husband does not yet know that response is greatly influenced by preliminary courtship, perhaps that is one of the things you will need to communicate to him, along with mental anticipation. Make some definite plans to take care of meals, children, and responsibilities so that you will have uninterrupted time to spend with your husband at the end of the day. Listen, wives, I have to say this real quick. I cannot stress this enough. I know that probably at the end of the day, you're exhausted. You haven't taken care of the home, kids, whatever season of life, whatever that looks like for you. And your husband is, I'm sure, tired as well when he gets home. But there is nothing more important than doing the very best that you can to giving your husband your undivided, sorry. I don't know why I'm so tongue-tied this evening. To giving your husband the attention that he needs. Now, again, it depends on the ages of the children. If, for example, you have an infant that is feeding every 2 to 3 hours, these things you can't just put off, right? So you do your best, and your husband will see that and really appreciate that. But wives, it is so important. Your husband's been out all day long. Who knows what kind of day he's had. He's coming home to the one person he loves and trusts and is close to. And maybe he wants to talk about his day, maybe vent, maybe just have that attention. We all need that. There's nothing wrong with him wanting or needing that either. But wives, so very important. No matter how tired you are, even if you're in the middle of still trying to get dinner together, or, you're running after 2 littles or something like that, try to do your best to give your husband the attention that he needs. And, definitely make sure you greet him and things like that. So, all right, let me finish reading. So the best way to change your attitude about sex is to start thinking and acting positively. For better feelings, always follow correct action. If your problem is that it takes you so long to get aroused, then start anticipating early in the day. Begin concentrating on the thought that sex with your husband is pleasant. Later, when lovemaking occurs, keep thinking, this is pleasing to my body. This is pleasing to me. This is what God created for me. I want to please my husband. This is going to be a happy experience, and I'm going to feel sensations that are pleasant and wonderful. So those are examples that the author gives. She says, this will greatly help you unless your husband just does not provide any wonderful sensations. In that case, she says, offer him this book to read so that he can learn how to pleasure his wife. So I chuckle, but it's true. This book really does have some great things that you can glean from and really help both husband and wife no matter where you're at. So yeah, definitely. If you can, definitely invest in this book. It's worth having. Okay, so if you want to be able to enjoy sex for what you receive from it as well as for what it does for your husband, you are going to have to take the responsibility for your own sexual pleasure and not hesitate to communicate your needs to your husband. Okay? Husbands likewise do the same. You are going to have to be very open with him if you hope to develop the relationship that will give you the most pleasurable sex. Both of you need to establish that rejection of a particular form of love play is not rejection of the person, only the action. Each of you must be willing to give and to receive suggestions to increase excitement. We women do not hesitate to communicate our need for example, a new dress or a new carpet. But when it comes to our sexual needs, we seem to clam up. Do not ever think a problem is too small or insignificant to be discussed. While in the process of lovemaking, concentration is most important. Even though you have been building anticipation and practicing new attitudes, you will find that you can be easily distracted and then have to start all over again in seeking arousal. You cannot allow yourself to lie there thinking about the problem of the day or about the fact that you forgot to take out, for example, the meat out of the freezer. You need to keep your mind and body working together. Concentrate on whatever will arouse your desire. Think of the joy you are experiencing as you and your husband possess each other. Be active and not passive, and you will enjoy lovemaking more. If you are active, your attention is less likely to wander. Do not be afraid to caress your husband while he is caressing you. When you abandon yourself to pursuing release, you will become more aware of your sensations, and your body will automatically begin to move about to help increase stimulation. By the way, have you ever initiated sex? Almost every husband finds this an exciting development. The occasional husband who feels threatened by it is often one who fears his own sexual inadequacy. Without saying one word, you can let your husband know that you think he is wonderful and that you find him physically attractive and desirable. I have definitely talked about this before. Wives, initiate lovemaking with your husband. Let him know how handsome he is to you. Let him know how sexy he is to you. Let him know that you want him. I mean, honestly, there's nothing, it's not unladylike. It's not being too it's your husband, there is nothing wrong. And in fact, I highly encourage it. Husbands do not always have to be the ones to initiate the lovemaking, and they shouldn't have to. Husbands want to know that they're wanted and desired as well. You know what I mean? Wives, there's nothing wrong with while your husband, maybe not too much to where he can't focus on work, but there's nothing wrong with sending him a text like, hey, I can't wait to see you tonight when you get home or whenever he gets home, or hey, thinking of you, you're so handsome, or, I don't know, maybe what I'm saying is corny, but or let him know, I can't, wait to be in your arms, or, whatever, you know what I mean? But the thing is, let him know, even when he's not around you, let him know how much you love him, how much you desire him, and like the author was saying, build up that anticipation throughout the day. I don't know. I think, how great would that be to build up that anticipation from the time that you see each other in the morning, your husband goes off to work, right? Maybe send some texts back and forth, maybe talk to each other real quick on a lunch break, and just kind of build that anticipation that by the time your husband gets home, and if, of course, time and circumstances allow, you guys are ready to hit that bed. You know what I mean? Because you've been thinking about it all day. You've been building up that anticipation. That makes for a really incredible night of sex. So give it a try if you haven't. You will not be sorry. Okay, so where did I leave off at? Okay, so perhaps there has been a difference of opinion on what frequency of intercourse is desirable. So whatever the two of you together prefer certainly is normal for your marriage. If you think your husband seems to require sex a lot more than you do, ponder this illustration for a moment. If you were in the desert and you were thirsty, you would think about a glass of water, wouldn't you? But if you're standing by the refrigerator and there's an opportunity to push a button and get a glass of ice cold water, and you know that you can push the button and get it any time you want to, the need for a drink is not nearly so urgent. Maybe the reason your husband seems never to think of anything besides sex is that he's in the desert and he's thirsty. Wives, if your husband is constantly, and again, I know I said earlier that men's sex drives are a little bit higher than maybe most women's, but if your husband is constantly bringing it up and talking about it and initiating it, he needs it. He needs sex. Women need it too, but listen, your husbands need it. Even scripture talks about this. That's why Paul says, if you abstain from one another, like for example, whether it's because you both agree for prayer and fasting, right? Or maybe one of you is ill, or maybe your husband has to go on a business trip for his job or something. You're apart from each other for, let's say, 3 days. Even Paul says it's important that after whatever that is, that separated the two of you, you come back together again, so that there's no temptation, so that Satan cannot come in and try to, cause or wreak havoc in that area, right? It's so important. Why? Because men, we both, men and women, need that fulfillment, but husbands even more. Wives, if your husband is constantly he's thirsty. Like he's in the desert. He's like, hey, I need a drink. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with your man because he wants you. Like, and I don't understand why wives feel like men are being dogs or men are being like, and of course they use it the wrong way, and they're going woman after woman after woman, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about in a marriage. The man has a right to desire his wife and to have his wife. Remember, even scripture says that when we marry, our bodies do not belong to ourselves. Our bodies belong to our spouse. Now, as I've explained so many times in my podcast, that does not mean we abuse that and misuse that. But I'm saying that because this is where this applies, right? So, I mean, if your man is like constantly like, hey, like he's letting you know, like I'm dry, like I need water. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, y'all. Okay. I'm not trying to be childish or laugh because it's silly. I don't know. All right. Anyways. So she goes on to say, and this is the part that I really wanted to share with wives. It says, sometimes you will be very tired and feeling, not feeling very sexy, but your husband will approach you with desire. Now, secular therapists say a wife should be able to say, sorry, but I'm just not in the mood tonight. But my own opinion as a believer and as a wife is that we can depend on Yahuwah to give us the strength and ability to be as warm and responsive as our husband desires, no matter how tired we are. As we commit this in prayer, trusting in Yahuwah to give us the strength to meet our husband's needs, we often find not only that we can do it, but that we enjoy the experience as well. The heart of the matter is attitude. Please do not be like the lady who told me grimly, I have never refused him. And yet it was obvious that the refusal was there in her heart and even in her voice. If you find rebellion rising within because of counsel that seems to stress, submission to your husband, and thus goes against your natural inclination, remember that submission to our Elohim and to our husband is a supernatural work, the result of our own choice of action plus Elohim's power. Psalm 48 says, I delight to do thy will, O my Elohim. And this is the point a wife must reach. Submission is always done by you and not to you. Ritual can become a hindrance to sexual enjoyment. If you and your husband have been having sex always at the same time in exactly the same routine, try a different time and a different approach. As a wife who usually schedules the activities for the family, you can plan times when you and your husband will be rested and ready for each other. Your husband needs energy for a good sexual relationship, and you can sometimes protect him from the exhaustion that comes from adding social activities on top of his daily workload. So that's why I was also saying in the Marriage Bed series that there's nothing wrong with believing couples or Christian couples, whatever you want to call it, to try different positions, to incorporate foreplay or oral sex and things like that. I don't think, honestly, let's just stop for a moment and think how detailed and incredible that Yahuwah made the male body and the female body. Okay. Like, he's just so infinite in his wisdom. And think about sex for a moment. Okay. Like, do we really think that Yahuwah wants husbands and wives to have the same kind of sex every single time? To not be able to explore each other's bodies, things like that. Like, the reason why I say this is because I have heard of so many pastors, leaders, churches, certain denominations literally tell people oral sex is a sin. Different positions is a sin. Like, you're not even supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to do this, that, and the next thing. And it's like, where is this even coming from? And the thing about it is that the scriptures themselves are silent about a lot of these things. Scripture doesn't even really talk about, like, for example, masturbation. I've had people ask me about that, and that's been a tough subject because I've had to pray about that. Because it's not mentioned in the Torah. Paul doesn't mention it, what's mentioned is homosexuality, bestiality, things like that, incest, but it doesn't mention certain things. But when I read books like Song of Solomon, which if you haven't read that book, read it, very romantic, great book. Maybe I'll read it sometime on the podcast. That's all about a husband and wife exploring one another, Like, how can honestly we think that our Father, the creator of these wonderful gifts, expects us to just have the same vanilla sex every single time? No, I made an episode just a few days ago where I talked about, sex toys, foreplay, certain positions, certain things that, yes, obviously we need to stay away from because scripture's clear on. So no third party, no porn, no anything that has to do with, the rear end, or that time of the month for women, because scripture is clear about those things being unclean. Third party is just not a good idea because it's a form of adultery. Porn, that opens up so many things, right? So it's basically adultery as well. So, there are things that scripture's clear on. And, so those are things that we should, steer clear from in the area of intimacy. But I think that when it comes to foreplay and positions, and just things like that, I think that, it intends for us to be able to explore our spouse's bodies and to be able to just find what works best for us, or enjoy, the different ways that we can make love to our spouses. You know what I mean? I had even heard of some people say that, women shouldn't ever be on top of their husband because it's dominating them. But yeah, I mean, I guess in a sense, I can understand maybe why they might think that, but it's just a wife making love to her husband. I don't see why that would be sinful or, dominating her husband. Now, I know that can be a thing in sex. I know there's a lot of crazy fetishes and things like that out there. Again, all I can do is encourage, use common sense, read the scriptures, and of course, pray about it. And I know people are like, oh, do I really pray to Yah about sex and this and that? Yes, he created it. And here's the thing, brothers and sisters, he wants husbands and wives to enjoy the gift of intimacy. He wants husbands and wives to be fulfilled in that area. He wants good things for us. So yes, pray about these things. If you're in doubt, if you have any questions, if you are not sure, pray about these things. I've said this many times before when I have talked about this topic of intimacy. Pray about it. There's nothing wrong with praying about it and going to the one that's created it. Okay? All right, so I want to first make mention about something that I had someone asked me a question about, and I actually mentioned anniversary a little bit ago. Somebody asked me, is it okay to celebrate, marriage anniversaries? This is something I've been praying about a lot. Most of you by now know I don't keep the, man-made holidays. I don't keep Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter, Valentine's, Halloween. I don't keep any of those holidays because they are rooted in paganism. I do keep Yah's feast days, Yah's 7 feast days. But I've had people ask me about wedding anniversaries or marriage anniversaries, and things like that. And so this is something I'm still praying about and seeking guidance. But so far, anniversaries, birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, I don't really see how those are rooted in paganism yet. I think if anything, there's nothing wrong with giving thanks and being thankful for your spouse or for your children that were born to you, or honoring your mother and father, although we're supposed to do that every day. It's one of the 10 commandments. I haven't had a conviction that we should not be keeping those. This year I did not celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day. Birthdays, we don't do cake and candles and things like that, maybe a gift and just, pray and thank Yah for this life, whether it's, one of the kids or, something like that, or your spouse or whatever. And anniversaries, I don't see anything wrong with celebrating the day that you and your spouse came together, and maybe getting each other a gift, maybe have a nice little, romantic dinner, or maybe, go out or get away, or, whatever. I really don't see anything wrong with that. I really don't. So in the meantime, I don't feel that that's a bad thing necessarily. Again, it's something I'm still seeking the Father about. But for now, I don't really see anything wrong with it. So I just wanted to throw that in there since I mentioned anniversary earlier. So, all right, I want to get into the last part of this message, and this is a position for lovemaking that I want to share. I was doing some research and I came across, I actually had never heard of this position before. It's crazy because it's not like one of those crazy out there kinky positions, because there's like a ton of positions out there. I did recently refer to positions that I was like, hey, give this a try. These are really intimate positions, and I still stand by it. Any positions that are side by side is incredibly romantic and passionate. And then I also recommended a position called the Lotus. Again, look these positions up so you can kind of see, especially if you're more of a visual person, they kind of give you like, no, it's not porn, but they kind of give you like this drawing, just to give you an example of what the position looks like so you know what you're doing, and then they explain it. So I just recommend you to do that because I don't even know if I'm going to explain this position very well or not. I actually took notes because I wanted to make sure I got this right. But the Lotus and the Tango, the side-by-side, definitely give it a try if you haven't. That will really help spice things up. And I mean, there's a lot of positions out there that are very intimate and passionate and romantic. But this one I want to share because there's benefits to this position for both the husband and the wife. So it's called so it's going to sound very mechanical and very technical, and it's not going to sound very romantic at all, but I promise you this is actually, after I looked up this position and was reading about it, it is actually an extremely, extremely intimate and passionate, incredible position that you and your spouse could do. And again, it benefits both the husband and wife in different ways. So it's called the coital, I think, Coital. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So the coital alignment technique, or CAT, CAT. So this position is a variation of the missionary position. So everybody's familiar with the missionary position. That's like the position that a lot of people go to. It's even what people would call quote unquote vanilla. So it's a variation of the missionary position. So it's penetrative sex, but instead of the husband thrusting in and out, he actually is going to be moving up and down against his wife. So less thrusting or no thrusting and more rocking and grinding. So the way that this position, again, I'm not good at describing these things, y'all, so bear with me. Again, look it up. That's all. Look it up, because I may not explain this very well. And again, I was trying to do this in a way that people won't find it to be inappropriate, but there's really no other way. So it would start by the husband would, enter slowly and gently. And then aligning his body with his wife's body, but just a little bit higher. So kind of like what you would call like riding high. And this will actually be easier, especially if maybe the husband is taller than the wife. This will be a little bit easier, but you'll get it. You'll be able to align your bodies. So once in alignment, the husband can gently and safely lower himself onto his wife. The wife will then wrap her legs around her husband's waist and place her feet on her husband's calves. So the sexual movement is focused in the area of the pelvises of both the husband and the wife without any leverage from arms and legs. And the lovemaking in this position should go at a slow and controlled pace. So again, this is a very passionate and intimate position. So basically, and hopefully the way I explained it, y'all are getting the picture. The husband is on top of the wife. There are some variations of missionary position where, or maybe it's not even considered missionary, but, the wife is laying on her back and the husband is, kneeling over her or is above her, but is holding himself with his hands or his elbows. His body's not completely on hers. With this position, the husband's body is on the wife's body. So you two are like, you're there, like you're close together. Like it's the closest you two are ever going to be. So that's what makes it a really just intimate and passionate position. So you're close to one another. I mean, you're like cheek to cheek. There can be a lot of eye contact, a lot of kissing. I mean, even though his whole body is on the wife, but, he can have his arms, wrapped around her, and likewise she can have, her arms wrapped around him. I mean, it's just a very intense, passionate position. And so the thing about this position, the reason why it's little to no thrusting and just more of a rocking and grinding motion, the idea is that, again, remember I was saying earlier that wives can have a hard time being stimulated, but where they receive a lot of stimulation is the clitoris or clitoris. I can never pronounce that correctly, but you all know what I'm saying. And so even though the husband is inside of his wife, but he's not thrusting, he's more of, kind of like the motion of the ocean type of thing. So she's getting double stimulation. I mean, and you can incorporate if you want a little bit of thrusting, but it's not meant to. The motion of the going up and down versus in and out is what helps the wife the most. So the benefits of this position, again, it's beneficial for both husband and wife. So this position is highly recommended, especially if it's your first time making love. If it's your first time making love, it's like the best position to do. Again, it's very intimate. It's, again, you're kind of going at a more slower, steadier pace, a little more controlled. It's just going to be a great first position for those that are coming together for the very first time. Again, it gives that stimulation for the wife in the clitoris area or the clitoris area. For husbands, it can actually help a husband who may suffer from erectile dysfunction, or for the husband who climaxes too quickly. Maybe he ejaculates too soon. So when you're going at a slower pace, he won't be so quick to climax, okay? So it'll help the husband last longer, and it will help the wife to achieve her orgasm. And then another benefit of this position is if a wife experiences pain during, intimacy, this position is great because the husband is not thrusting in and out. So therefore, there's less pain or there's no pain because there's no thrusting or deep thrusting. So it's just beneficial for both husband and wife. But again, this is a very, I encourage you all to, look it up when you have time. If you feel led, maybe you feel like this would be good for you and your spouse. I've actually, I started seeing things about this position, all over the place, and mainly in marriage ministries and believers talking about this, those that are, sharing about intimacy and things like that. They're saying this is the position to go to and to try. So I was like, okay, I've never heard of this position before. And so when I looked it up and I started reading about it, and again, it's also in the book, which is where I first saw it, the book Intended for Pleasure, I was like, okay. And at first when I was reading it, I didn't quite understand it. So I'm a more visual person. Sometimes I need things drawn out or something like that so I can understand how they're explaining it to me, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Of course I usually try to stay away from images like that, but sometimes you got to see it, to really understand it. And so, yeah, I mean, once I started reading about it and understanding the benefits and how it really does help a husband and wife, and then, just kind of seeing an image, a drawing, of how it goes, I'm just like, okay, this is a very, very intimate position. This is something that, I recommend all couples to try if you haven't. And again, it's beneficial for both husband and wife. So it's going to be a longer lovemaking session. Again, it's going to help the husband to last longer. If the husband struggles with erectile dysfunction, it's going to help him with that. It's going to help the wife be stimulated in two different ways. and help her to really achieve an orgasm as well. It's, going to be, lovemaking. It's going to be slow. It's going to be very passionate. And just, you're very close to one another, like your husband is literally not on top of you uncomfortably, he's not like pressing his weight down onto you, but he's on top of you. Like your bodies are completely meshed together. It's the best way I could put it. Probably not the most attractive word, but best way that I could put it. And the motion, it's more of a rocking and grinding. So it's better all the way around, Now, some people prefer thrusting, that sensation, and that's fine too. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But again, this position, I highly, highly, highly recommend for every couple to try at least one time and just see what you think and see if it was beneficial for either you or your spouse or for both of you. Again, when I just learned about it, I just thought, wow, this is a really awesome position, no matter where you're at in your marriage, whether it's your very first time coming together, whether you've been together for several years, or maybe you're facing new and different, issues that have come up in the area of intimacy. Again, maybe the wife is having a hard time achieving orgasm. Maybe the husband is, ejaculating too soon, too quickly, or maybe he's having a problem as well, such as erectile dysfunction. I don't know. But the thing is, this position can help with a lot of those things. If a wife experiences pain with thrusting or deep thrusting during intercourse, this position will not cause her that kind of pain. Again, it's just, and again, I know there's a lot of positions out there. I know there's a lot of crazy things out there, but I really, really would encourage couples to try this at least once and see what you think. So, especially if you are a very romantic couple and you're all about that lovemaking, I think that's really going to be a beautiful experience for both spouses. So I wanted to share that. Again, look it up. I probably didn't do a very good job of explaining it. And I give all praise and glory to Yah, because honestly, I'm not a shy person anymore. I used to be, and if I was still that same person, it would be so hard for me to even discuss half of these things, just because, again, it's detailed. But as I stated earlier, or at the beginning of this episode, it's important. It's a very important part of marriage, and for me to have a marriage ministry and not talk about that area, and at some point you have to go into detail. You can't just skip over things or beat around the bush or, again, there were so many other things that I wanted to share just out of this book I recommended, but I'm like, I better not, because it's explicit, again, in a respectful way, but I'm just like, I can't read those things for whoever to hear and, people be offended or whatever. So, but again, I know I said this like 5 times already, but I really highly, highly recommend this book, Intended for Pleasure by Ed Wheat. Or if you somebody's getting ready to get married, or maybe they have confided in you, they're having some issues. I would even recommend to give somebody this book. For me, it was, chew the meat, spit out the bones. I didn't agree with everything in this book, but I was able to take so much from this book, and it's just been super helpful, and I know that it will be a blessing to many other couples as well. So again, you can find it on Amazon or really any bookstore, book website. It is not too expensive. I can't remember how much this book was. I know it wasn't that much though. So, anyways, if you have any questions or anything like that, or something you need to talk about, counsel, whatnot, please feel free to reach out to me with the ministry email, and I would be happy to help you in that area. So, okay, I believe that wraps up intimacy for now. I don't think there's anything else that I needed to share or feel led to share. If there is, I will definitely come on and share. Again, I don't know about the future of the podcast at the moment. I have been releasing quite a few words in the past few days, really. I had a break there for a little bit, and then I was releasing some words there. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be back on or not with a word. Again, it's been a crazy month trying to figure out where we're going to go, where we're heading to next, waiting for Yah to answer and open whatever doors that he's going to open, and just seeing what's going to happen. So in a huge transition right now. And that's why I keep saying that I'm probably going to put the podcast off for now, because I have no idea what's going to happen. But praise Yah, he's been leading me to share certain things, and so I will continue to do that. So I'm not going to say goodbye for now, or I'll see you next time, because I don't know what's going to happen from here to tomorrow. So I just hope and pray that y'all are enjoying the episodes that I have recorded and published. I pray that they've been a blessing for you and source of encouragement. Again, feel free to email me with any questions or anything like that you may have. And yeah, I hope that this episode was helpful, and I hope that y'all enjoy it. And thanks for bearing with me, y'all. And I appreciate the support. So I love you all so much. I pray you have a blessed rest of your evening and a blessed rest of your week. And I will talk to you all as soon as I can. And thank you for your prayers and your support and your continued prayers. They mean so much to me, and I really appreciate it. All right, y'all. Shalom.